Next challenge, we have got a spoon of hot sauce. I'm going to see who can do the most. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, the ball. 1, 2, 3, go. I have not had a nice time. 1, 2, get off, that's outrageous. 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. 3, 2, 1, go. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 3, go. Oh. 1, 2, 3, go. Draw. Draw. Well, welcome you back to Limitless TV. This is the second episode of our series on overcoming limitations.
In the last episode, we talked together about how God has plans and purposes for our lives, but as we go along the journey, we can come across some limitations that stop us from stepping into everything that God has for us.
Last time we spoke about the limitation of self-doubt, and today we're speaking about fear.
So, what are you afraid of, Jamie?
Tim, I have a fear of the dentist.
Okay.
I don't like people prodding around in my mouth. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I get that. I get that.
What about yourself?
I'm afraid of arriving late for things.
What?
No, seriously, I genuinely have anxiety dreams about not showing up on time. But I don't think we need to dwell on that now. I don't think we need to dwell on that. I'd rather tell you about what my wife Jen is afraid of.
Let's stitch her up. Come on.
Let's do that, let's do that. She doesn't know about this, so that's fine. She is afraid of camels.
Camels?
She's afraid of camels. And I want to tell you about a time I took full advantage of this fear. And it was her birthday, and I took her to the West Midlands Safari Park to celebrate her birthday. Now, if you've never been to the West Midlands Safari Park, let me tell you about it. You drive through in your car and you get animal feed. And the idea is you're driving through and all the animals are free roaming and you're opening up your windows and you're holding out the feed in your hands. It's amazing because the giraffes are like leaning down, they're eating food out of your hands. It's an amazing experience. So we're in the car, we're having a lovely time. We're driving around, Jen's feeding the animals, having a lovely birthday.
Right.
Until we got to the camel paddock. And when we got to the camel paddock, as you can imagine, because she's afraid of camels, as quick as a shot, she pulled up all the windows in the car so that she could not engage with the camels. The problem was, for Jen, that at that point we entered into a traffic jam, so we ended up having to stop the car. So we're in the car, I'm in the driver's seat, Jen is kind of in the passenger seat where you are. She's looking at me, I'm looking at her, we're having a nice conversation when I noticed that just behind her, right up to the window, strolls a camel. And this camel is looking longingly at the food that Jen is holding in her hands. Now this, my friends, is what we call a window of opportunity. Because what I did at this point is like some kind of Jedi, some kind of ninja. I just subtly, slowly put my hand over the electronic window control and pushed down her window.
No way.
And as quick as you like, this camel's head was fully inside the car, trying to eat the feed out of Jen's hands, and Jen is screaming like, ah! This camel's like, trying to get the food out of her hand. And so, in her panic, because she was afraid, what Jen did, foolishly, was she shut the window, hoping it would shut the camel out, but instead, it trapped the camel's head inside the window. So now Jen's screaming, ah! And the camel is panicking because the camel is stuck in the car, trying to get its head out of the car. And eventually I had mercy. I let the window down and let the camel out and said, "Happy birthday, darling. Happy birthday."
Did that camel have the hump?
Oh no, Jamie, shocking joke. But here's the point. When Jen was afraid, what did she do? She shut the windows.
And you know what? That's what fear does in our lives. It shuts the windows and closes you off from experiencing anything that exists beyond the borders of your fear.
Yeah, that's right. But here's the thing. When God calls you, He always calls you to a place that exists beyond where you are now. So it will always seem too big for you. It will always feel beyond you, and therefore it's always going to feel a little bit scary. So that means in order to step into the purposes of God for your life, you need to break through the borders of your fear and overcome that limitation in your life.
So we're going to have a quick look at the Bible together. And there's this guy in the Bible called Joshua. Now Joshua was an Israelite. He and his tribe had been in slavery in Egypt for 430 years. Wow. Long time. And after that they spent a further 40 years in the desert, wandering around, trying to get to this place called the Promised Land that God had promised to them. And finally, they're kind of in the home stretch. They're about ready to go towards the Promised Land. And what God does is He calls Joshua to lead them into it. But to do that, Joshua's going to have to literally and metaphorically cross the borders of his fear. So I'm going to read a few verses together from Joshua 1. It says, "After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites." And we skip down to verse 5. "No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the laws my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn to it from the right or the left, that you may be successful in what you do. Do not let this book of law depart from your mouth, and meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything that is written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will go with you wherever you go." Now Tim, just an observation from that. Why do you think that God had to say to Joshua, "Do be strong and courageous, do not be afraid"? Not once, not twice, but 4 times.
Well, I'd have to guess because he was afraid.
You've got it one, mate. Because he was afraid. And that shows actually that sometimes fear can be an indicator of the call of God on our lives.
Yeah.
Because when God calls you, it will always extend the borders of where you are now, and it will always stretch you. Always seem too big for you, almost sometimes feel impossible.
Yeah.
And it may well frighten you. Because the call of God will always exceed the capacity of the one that He calls. And sometimes that fear is an indicator that you're on to something special.
Yeah, so what do you do then if you feel that God is calling you to something, but actually you feel afraid?
Okay, well, psychologists tell us that we are born with only 2 fears. The first one is the fear of falling.
Right.
And the second one is the fear of loud noises. Every other fear is learned, which means that every other fear can be unlearned. To pursue the call of God, you have to unlearn the things that you are scared of. The fear of failure, maybe, the fear of rejection, the fear of ridicule. You need to unlearn these fears, and the only way to unlearn them is to face those fears.
That reminds me of something I heard about how lions hunt. So I heard that lions, they hunt together in a pride, and kind of like humans, some would argue, apparently it's the lionesses that do all of the hard work.
Ooh.
So what happens is, the male lion will go in front of, say they're hunting a zebra, he'll go in front of the zebra and he'll let out the loudest noise, he'll let out his biggest roar, and of course, because of fear, that zebra will turn around and run away from the roar. But, of course, all of the females from the pride are behind the zebra, waiting to take it down. So it turns out that counterintuitively, the safest thing for that zebra would actually have been to run towards the roar.
Interesting, and that is exactly it, isn't it? Run towards the roar, step out into the gap, do the thing that scares you, and you'll discover that the will of God is both the safest and the scariest place to be.
Yeah, I learned something once from a great theologian. His name was Thomas the Tank Engine, and I was watching Thomas the Tank Engine once, and I heard him say, being brave is not the same as not being scared. It's about what you do even when you're scared.
It's deep.
It's deep, and it's so right, it's so right, because overcoming fear isn't actually about not being afraid, it's about being strong and courageous even when you're afraid. So the question is not, are you afraid? The question is, will you let your fear limit you, or will you be strong and courageous like Joshua and go for it anyway? Because God's purposes for your life exist just beyond the borders of your fear.
And just like in the last episode, it's about changing our perspectives.
Yeah.
Not looking at the size of the fear or the call, but looking at the size of our God.
Yeah, that's right. See, what you give your attention to is what you give authority to. So if you give your attention to the thing that you fear, then those fears will rule you. But if you give your attention to God, then God will rule your fears. You see, I've learned that if fear is about putting your circumstances between you and God, then faith is putting God between you and your circumstances. Faith is trusting that God is with us in our circumstances, and if God is with us, well, we have no reason to be afraid.
God's purpose for your life exists just beyond the border of your fears. The words of the Lord said to Joshua, he says to you today, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid.